The Wyoming winter did not ask for permission. It simply took. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the promise of violence, as the wind howled across the plains. Snow had already begun to fall, dusting the hardened ruts of the road where the hired wagon had unceremoniously halted. Mei Lin stepped down, her breath hitching in her throat as the cold bit through her clothes. She did not look like a woman who belonged in this harsh, monochromatic world. She wore a high-collared cheongsam of deep crimson silk, embroidered with gold thread that caught the last of the failing light, beneath a heavy woolen cloak she had purchased in San Francisco. She clutched a lacquered wooden case to her chest, the only piece of her past she had refused to sell. The man who met her was not merely a rancher. Callan Thorne stood by the gate, his silhouette cut from iron and shadow. A low-slung gun belt rested on his hips, the leather worn smooth near the holster from years of use. He was a man with a reputation that had traveled faster than he could ride, a gunslinger who had traded bounty hunting for cattle branding, trying to outrun ghosts that refused to stay buried. He looked at Mei Lin, his eyes narrowing against the biting wind. He wasn't expecting a woman, let alone one who looked like a porcelain doll amidst the rough timber and ice. "Driver said you needed shelter until the pass clears," Callan said, his voice a low gravel that sounded unused to conversation. "Didn't say you were foreign. Didn't say you were alone." "I am alone, Mr. Thorne," Mei Lin replied, her English precise, clipped with an accent that sang of a world oceans away. "And I require nothing but a corner to wait out the weather. I can pay." "Money's no good when the drifts hit 10 feet, Callan muttered. He gestured to the house behind him. "Get inside. Storm's got teeth." Callan's 3 sons watched from the porch, peeking out from behind the support beams like wary wolf pups. The oldest, Jace, was 12, with his father's dark, watchful eyes. The middle boy, Toby, 8, looked curious but frightened. The youngest, Benny, only 5, sucked his thumb, his other hand gripping Jace's trousers. They ushered her into the main room. It was built of heavy logs, sturdy enough to stop a bullet or a blizzard, but it was devoid of warmth. There were no curtains, only shutters. The furniture was purely functional. It was the home of a man who slept with one eye open. "Boys, this is Mrs. Mei Lin," Callan introduced her briefly. "She's stranded. Jace, take her bag to the sewing room. It's the only place with a door that locks." "You have a sewing room?" Mei Lin asked softly, looking around the barren space. "My wife's," Callan said, the words shutting down further inquiry. "She's been gone 3 years." Jace took the lacquered case. He paused, looking at the intricate dragons carved into the wood. "What's in here? Is it heavy?" "It holds my husband's legacy," Mei Lin said gently, "and my tools. I am a healer." "Like a doctor?" Jace asked, skepticism warring with wonder. "Different. I use the earth. Roots, needles, pressure," she explained. Callan watched the exchange, his hand hovering near his belt buckle out of habit, before turning to the fireplace. "Don't bother her, boys. She'll be gone soon as the snow stops." But the snow did not stop. By nightfall, the world outside had vanished behind a curtain of white so thick it felt like the house had been swallowed whole. The wind screamed like a banshee, rattling the heavy shutters. Mei Lin sat in the corner on a stiff wooden chair, her red silk dress a vibrant splash of color in the gray room. She watched Callan move. He checked the windows and barred the door with a thick beam. He moved with the coiled tension of a panther, efficient and deadly. Dinner was a silent affair. Callan served a stew that was hot but flavorless, meat and potatoes boiled until they surrendered. The boys ate quickly, eyes darting to the stranger. "Why do you wear that dress?" Benny asked suddenly, his voice small in the quiet room. "It's not for cowboys." "Benny," Callan warned. "It is all right," Mei Lin smiled, and the expression transformed her face. "It is a cheongsam. In my culture, red brings good fortune and joy. I thought, traveling alone in winter, I could use a little of both." "Where is your husband?" Toby asked. "He died," Mei Lin said, her gaze drifting to the fire. He was a scholar. We came to America for a new life. The sickness took him in the camps near the railroad. Now, I travel east to his brother. Callan stopped eating. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the grief etched around her eyes, mirroring his own. A widow, he stated flatly. Hard road for a woman alone. Harder for one, like you, out here. I have learned that grief is a universal language, Mr. Thorne. She met his gaze. And survival is a necessity, not a choice. The storm raged for 3 days. The isolation, which usually suffocated the house, began to shift. On the second day, Benny woke with a hacking cough, his small chest rattling. Callan paced the floor, his face pale. He had lost his wife to a fever. The sound of sickness terrified him more than any man with a gun. I have nothing for it, Callan admitted, his voice tight. Whiskey and honey, but we're out of honey. Let me, Mei Lin said. She went to her lacquered case. She did not bring out rocks or scientific instruments, but small jars of dried herbs, a jade grinding stone, and thin silver needles. Callan blocked her path to the boy, his frame filling the doorway. I won't let you stick him with needles. You carry iron on your hip to protect their bodies, Mei Lin said, her voice steel-hard but quiet. Allow me to use my tools to protect his breath. Or do you prefer to watch him struggle? Callan hesitated, then stepped aside. Mei Lin brewed a pungent tea from dried roots and massaged the pressure points on Benny's chest and back. Within the hour, the boy's breathing eased. He fell into a deep, restful sleep. Callan sat by the fire, watching her clean her jade stone. I apologize, he said gruffly. No need. You are a father. I'm a gunman, he corrected her. Or I was, trying to be a father. Don't know that I'm much good at it. I can keep them safe from bandits, but this, he gestured to the domestic quiet. I don't know how to make a home. A home is not built of timber, Callan. She used his first name, testing the weight of it. It is built of gentle things. Over the next few days, the house changed. The smell of stale grease was replaced by the scent of star anise and ginger from Mei Lin's supplies. She couldn't change the furniture, but she changed the atmosphere. She taught the boys how to fold paper into cranes, explaining that they carried wishes to heaven. She showed them the jade carving of a dragon, explaining that dragons were not monsters to be slain, but guardians of water and weather. Jace, the oldest, who tried so hard to be a man like his father, watched her with intense fascination. My pa says dragons aren't real, he said, tracing the cool green stone. Perhaps not here, Mei Lin said, but in my land, they bring the rain. They are powerful because they protect, not because they destroy. A man who protects is stronger than a man who only fights. She looked up to find Callan watching her from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Christmas was approaching. The boys had lost track of the days, but Mei Lin had not. On Christmas Eve, the storm broke. The silence that followed was deafening. The sun rose on a world sculpted from diamond dust, blindingly white. Roads will be clear by tomorrow, Callan announced, coming in from the barn. Stagecoach should make it through. The air in the room instantly grew heavy. Benny stopped playing with his paper crane. Toby looked down at his boots. Of course, Mei Lin said, keeping her back to them as she packed her herbs. I should not overstay. That night, the house felt colder than it had during the blizzard. The boys were sent to bed early. Callan and Mei Lin sat by the dying fire. You're good with them, Callan said, pouring 2 cups of black coffee. Better than I am. They are good boys. They are lonely. They miss their mother. And they miss their father, Mei Lin said boldly. They see the gunslinger, the protector. They are waiting for the man. Callan looked at his hands. My hands are stained, Mei Lin. I've done things that don't wash off. I thought bringing them out here, away from the cities, would keep them pure. But I just isolated them with a ghost. You think you are darkness, she said, reaching out to touch his scarred hand. Her skin was ivory against his weathered tan. But you provided shelter to a stranger. You gave me your bed. You watched over me while I slept. That is not the heart of a killer." He looked at her, and the distance between them felt charged, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with violence. "You have a life waiting in the East. I have a brother-in-law I have never met. I have duty." "Duty," Callan repeated bitterly. "It's a cold bedfellow. It is all I have left." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. The wagon that would take Mei Lin to the main road was prepared. Callan was in the barn, checking the horses with unnecessary aggression, tightening cinches until the animals danced. He was angry at the weather for clearing, angry at himself for wanting it to stay. Inside, Mei Lin closed the latches of her lacquered case. She smoothed the silk of her cheongsam. She had nothing to give the boys but the paper cranes and the memory of a few days of softness. She walked out to the porch. The boys were lined up, just as they had been when she arrived. But the fear was gone, replaced by a devastating sorrow. Benny ran to her first, burying his face in the red silk. "Don't go. It's Christmas. You can't leave on Christmas." "I must, little one," she soothed, stroking his hair. "Who will make the tea?" Toby asked, his voice cracking. "Who will tell us about the dragons?" Callan brought the wagon around. He stepped down, his face a mask of stone. He reached for her case. Then Jace, the 12-year-old who barely spoke, stepped between his father and the luggage. He looked at Callan, his fists clenched at his sides. "Don't let her go, Pa," Jace said, his voice trembling but loud. "Jace, step aside," Callan warned. "No," Jace shouted. "You fought the cattle rustlers last summer. You ran off the wolves. You fight everything. Why won't you fight for this? Son, she has a life. She has nothing out there but strangers." Jace pointed at Mei Lin. "She made Benny better. She made you smile, Pa. I saw it. You never smile." "Jace," Callan's voice dropped, dangerous and low. "You're the fastest gun in the territory," the boy challenged, tears finally spilling over. "But you're a coward if you let her leave." The word hung in the frozen air. Coward. It was a word men had died for saying to Callan Thorne. But coming from his son, it struck deeper than a bullet. Benny began to wail, clinging to Mei Lin's leg. "Please, Daddy. Make her stay. Please." Mei Lin stood frozen. She looked at the boys, these wild, motherless children who had claimed her. Then she looked at Callan. The mask had slipped. She saw the terror in his eyes, not of her leaving, but of him asking her to stay and being rejected. He didn't think he was worthy of the red silk and the jade dragons. He thought he was only worthy of the gun belt and the snow. Callan looked at his sons. He looked at the woman standing in the snow, looking like a flame that refused to go out. He realized Jace was right. He had spent years fighting to keep death away, but he hadn't lifted a finger to invite life in. He dropped his hand from the wagon's rein. He took a step toward her. The snow crunched under his boots. "Mei Lin," he said. His voice was rough, stripped of all defenses. "The boy is right. I'm no good at asking for things. I'm used to taking or defending. I don't know how to ask." "Try," she whispered. "It ain't safe here," he said, the arguments falling out weakly. "I ain't a gentle man. I come with a lot of shadows. I am not afraid of shadows. I have my own." Callan took off his hat, exposing his face to the cold sun. Then, "Don't go. We need you. I need you." The silence stretched, thin and fragile. "I cannot be a replacement," she said softly. "I cannot be who you lost." "I'm not looking for the past." Callan stepped closer, his hand tentatively reaching out to cover hers where it rested on Benny's shoulder. "I'm looking at you. Right now." Mei Lin looked at the wagon, then back at the house, the fortress of logs that had felt like a prison 3 days ago and now felt like the only place in the world that mattered. She looked at the gunslinger who was willing to lay down his pride for his children, and for her. She smiled, and it was warmer than the winter sun. "My brother-in-law in the east. I do not think he is expecting me with any great urgency. She released her grip on the case. Jace let out a breath that sobbed in his chest. Benny cheered, a high, piercing sound that sent crows flying from the fence line. You're staying, Toby whispered. I believe the pass is still too dangerous. She lied, her eyes locked on Callan's. It might take a very long time for it to be safe. Perhaps until spring. Perhaps forever. Callan didn't smile, but the tension left his shoulders. He looked like a man who had just drawn a winning hand after a lifetime of folding. He picked up Benny, who was still clinging to Mei Lin, and looked at her with an intensity that promised a different kind of fire. Merry Christmas, Mei Lin, he said. Merry Christmas, Callan. Spring came late to Wyoming that year, but when it arrived, it was vibrant. The snowmelt fed the creeks until they roared. On the porch of the Thorn Ranch, the wind chimes sang, not made of metal, but of carefully carved wood and jade. Mei Lin stood on the porch, watching the boys run through the tall grass. She no longer wore the heavy wool cloak, though the red silk cheongsam remained, now paired with sturdy leather boots. Callan walked up the steps behind her. He had unbuckled his gun belt and hung it by the door. He didn't wear it in the house anymore. He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. Letter came from town, he said quietly. Your brother-in-law. He understands, she said, leaning back into him. He wishes us happiness. Jace found some wild sage, Callan murmured. He wants to know if you can use it for medicine. He has a good eye. He will make a fine healer. Better than a gunman, Callan said, the old bitterness gone, replaced by a quiet pride. He can be both. Mei Lin turned in his arms to face him, a protector and a healer, like his father. Callan kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of coffee and promise. The ranch was no longer a fortress against the world. It was a home. The gunslinger had found his peace, not in the silence of the grave, but in the laughter of his children and the red silk of a woman who had taught him that love was the only fight worth winning.